And we're live, excess male, and I haven't spoken to excess male before, but I met him through Thomas White. And is it called Thomas White? Excess male? That's his channel, isn't it? I hope that I got the name of it right. It's um, you're part of the manosphere, shall I say?
Yeah, reluctantly, but yeah, you could say I've been active in this space for about 6 years.
Hmm. And have things improved, or are they getting worse? Or
No serious improvements, nothing significant. However, I do think that some of the voices in the community and like the ideas and like the understanding of what's going on, I do think that there has been uh, a significant improvement thanks to a few specific men who went public, or not public, but put their voices out there.
right, and who might they be?
Well, they're basically all anonymous,
Hmm.
and which is understandable. But one is a man about my age who lives in California, and he's a pretty smart lad, from what I can tell. And he started getting involved in making his content in very late 2019, and he goes by the name First, and he collaborated with, I believe, a European um, younger man, and they created the channel called Inselmatics, which was basically a project meant to not just dissect the issue at hand, but also um, make the uninitiated invested in it. That was really the intention that he had. And aside from him, there's
Invest.
sorry, who?
What do you mean by what do you mean by invest? Um, from what I understand of the situation, um, men are complaining about feminism, but anonymously, in order to avoid being targeted or um, cancelled. Is that what you're saying? But I didn't understand what you meant about investing in it. What you mean becoming paying subscribers and that sort of thing.
Well, first, he never really asked anyone for money. That
Hmm.
was another positive aspect about him, and that's what made me realize that he was being genuine. When I say invest, what he was trying to do was get basically all people, both men and women, young and old, rich and poor, really everyone collectively living in Western society. He was trying to get everyone on board with at least talking about male plight, and not even offering solutions. Like he thought it was despicable how um, it was a taboo and no one talked about it, not even academics and scientists. And it's something I have to agree with. It's one thing to offer no solution, but it's another thing to start denying it, and that's just really insulting. Um,
Hmm.
as a man, to just be told that what you're seeing in real time isn't actually real. It's not really happening. It's not a valid concern. I mean, that's easy to say when you're not the one who is burdened by it. It's very easy to hand wave, and
Hmm.
that's really what people do. And I remember the I remember the climate in 2019. Um, MGTOW was made fun of and dismissed, and so were incels, and nothing's really improved. Um, Men are still dismissed. They're basically unwanted. They report feeling lonely. Um, they are, in fact, even the ones who do have a partner. Plenty of them are neglected by their spouse or their girlfriend. In many cases, they are casually cheated on, and I've noticed that these men don't even seem to have the gumption to call a spade and admit that their partner is in fact cheating. And what they'll do is they will participate in damage control for their um, irresponsible, sexually immoral partner, and they'll say, "Oh no, it's an open relationship. She can have a hall pass, and so can I." But it's an absurd cover up,
Mm.
generally speaking, from what I can
Do you
tell.
think it's
So
caused? Do you think all this is caused by both men and women not taking marriage seriously, though?
yes, absolutely. That's why I actually really like your like what you have proposed is very unusual. Like that's never been seen before in the history of the manosphere. From what I can, and I've done lots of digging. I've read, um, I've looked at the screenshots that are saved from forums that have been abandoned for years to see what men were discussing in 2005, 2010. Um, and shockingly, um, no one was really posing some real actionable notion of some kind. It was just men ruminating on what is happening, where is this coming from, why are these changes so why are they so seemingly abrupt, and it was sort of like reading the message boards of the blind leading the blind.
Mm.
But when I watched your interview with Thomas and Frederick, um, I didn't know who you were, and I had never heard the term secular Coranism before, but I could obviously like deduce what it meant, and I thought it was fascinating. Um, it made
Have
too
you
much
bought my
sense
book?
to. I haven't, but I
Okay.
mean, I'd like to read whatever literature there is that goes deeper, I suppose. But yeah, it is a very very simple 1 + 1 = 2 type of solution to the current problem. And what's nice about it is if you tried to really go public with this here in America, nobody could really attack it and call it a form of sexism because it very brilliantly puts a burden of performance on men and women at the same time.
Yes. So, well, in the same way, it's saying, well, you've got to marry to fix your, labor problems that has led to so much immigration that you're all complaining about. Um, and, and obviously, once you have children, you have to ban no fault divorce. Which is, I suppose, one of the problems that they have in other countries. Divorce, I think, is quite easy now in outside the West. Um, so I suppose it's really re-examining the terms and conditions of marriage, which I suppose might be a bit hard since nobody wants to marry anyway. So it will be hard for people to take it seriously because I guess even on dating apps and things, people don't want to say they're looking for a marriage partner because that sounds so, I don't know, serious or desperate or something, I suppose.
Right, yeah. So like there seems to be some serious like cultural problems with with the sexes when you look at the younger generations, like let's say post millennial, so people who were born in the 90s, early 2000s, like there is a very, very strong aversion to things like monogamy, um, being hitched, marriage, lifelong dedication. All of these hallmarks really just make these younger people, these young adults, people my age, just very, very uncomfortable. They don't see it as a virtue. They don't see it as something practical. They think that it's a net negative, and that it clamps down on their personal happiness and freedoms. But that's actually not true at all. It's actually they have it completely backwards.
Yes, I mean, it will be a trial, I suppose, but eventually it will be rewarding if you married a person who is at least, reasonably fond of you and well intentioned towards you, and what wants more or less the same things. And I suppose people don't think to ask, because I suppose they think, if the romance is going well, if the sex is going well, they don't need to think of anything. But I suppose even if the sex is going well, it's a trap in a way, because then it masks a lot of um, warning signs, I suppose, or, of personality traits that one might not notice in the height of the relationship, that sort of thing. Um, and I suppose no sex before marriage is a very drastic idea, isn't it? These days.
Uh, uh, in the current context, it is. Um, but I would say it like if things are to improve, like that would be a non-negotiable thing. It would have to be practiced by everyone. They would
Hmm.
have to conserve themselves until they are partnered up, and I actually think that um, your partner, your spouse, it would be it'd be reasonable to just assign these things instead of leaving an entire generation out to dry and say, well, you figure it out amongst yourselves. That's actually very, very irresponsible. In previous societies, it was never done that way.
Yes, that
um,
the parents would arrange these. Well, they would arrange the marriages of their children. What would you care to share with us how your parents are dealing with the idea of marriage in for you and maybe your siblings?
well, they are no longer alive, but I do remember talking about this with my dad, who was an older man, and he was born in the 1940s. So he recalls when Americans were generally invested in monogamy, and and both men and women didn't want someone's used car or used shoe. And
Yes.
so they both men and women at the same time, um, when he was a youngster in the late 50s, early 60s, um, there was like this unspoken social contract where the girls wanted a dutiful spouse, and a guy who had the ability to provide for her and not abuse her, and those things like that. That from what my dad told me about his upbringing and like the social environment. That's that's what I was picking up. Like that's what it sounds like. Even though I
Mhm.
wasn't there, and I can only imagine. But yeah, that's like a very, very healthy um, template for young men and young women. Like even when they're teenagers, they do have um, those feelings for each other. They are attracted to each other. They go on dates. They go to dances. They kiss. They cuddle, but they do not have sex.
Mhm.
Like that. That's where it starts to get uh, dangerous
Yes.
and complicated and messy.
Mm.
So and so he obviously saw the utility in something like that. He and I didn't talk about secular Coronism or the modern uh, commentary from the Manosphere because I understand it's just out of his purview
Mhm.
at his age.
Mhm.
But he, when I was growing up, he always just assumed that things would take care of themselves, and I would end up with a nice, idyllic spouse. But I mean, that's just wishful thinking. That's a Disney movie, just world, um, kind of fallacy to have.
Well, under secular Coronism, there would be government-run marriage bureaus who will do all the criminal checks and stuff.
Yes, yeah, right, yeah, and I'm actually very okay with that.
Well,
And
I hope you men will talk about it more because, that's the obvious way to do it. The government can help since it's been so unhelpful with introducing, no fault divorce and undermining a marriage or with all kinds of ideas like gay marriage and, other harmful policies harmful to marriage. They can, start helping people, you know, to marry and stay married, I would have thought.
yeah, well, government would be a great mediator.
Mm,
Just for lots of things, not just how like men and women interact and live with each other, but government would, in theory, be a very, very helpful thing, a lifeline for people's issues. But in America specifically, I refuse to believe that the government has any good intentions for the public mass.
Well, I really think that they first need to be called out, right? Because, at the moment, well, European governments don't even think of governing in a national interest. It's, whatever suits them, whatever war that rewards the people in charge. Um, so the idea of the national interest is never mentioned. But um, with so many people complaining about immigration and the people complaining about immigration calling themselves nationalists. I think, that the time is now right for, talking about, should we define nationalism as government in the national interest? And once it is agreed amongst people calling themselves nationalists, then everything can be asked like, is such and such a policy in the national interest? Is continuing the war in Ukraine, is supporting marriage, banning no fault divorce. I mean, all kinds of things can, then be put on this line that can, swing, yes, it is in a national interest, or no, it's not in a national interest. And I think we just need to find the right form of words that is easily understood by, ordinary people, that you can easily, explain to people, maybe even at a tea party about, what should be done. And um, perhaps I'm a bit over optimistic, but if people are complaining all the time about immigrants and labour shortages, etc., then the solution must be to have more children. But obviously you have to parent them responsibly, and the government has to help by putting laws in place which you know make parents married and stay together, and obviously admit that they made a terrible mistake. in not doing this more. Um, but also the anti-immigration political parties don't seem to be talking about any of this at all. But I don't think it would be that hard to get them to talk about it. But I think it's because they sort of sense, well, nobody wants to talk about marriage, and it's too controversial, and if men can get sex from women without marrying them, um, then they won't want to. But I suppose men haven't quite decided whether they would actually say, well, no, no premarital sex, because then that they wouldn't be able, to partake of it. But I suppose men, most men want women to give it up to them easily, but be more restrictive as regards other men. But of course, the maths don't work out that way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a disaster. Like, uh, uh, it's hard to fully describe it, honestly. Like, just, and this has been an issue. Like this dysfunction, this lack of compatibility, has been going on for some time, and the American media, um, dating podcast hosts, these people pretend like this is a recent advent, like it just fell out of the sky like 3 years ago, and that's totally absurd. I remember being just a boy in high school, and the um, the implementation of apps and normalizing social media, like those two things really kind of were the two peas in a pod. It was really the same agenda, and they both had awful consequences. This was, to give you context. I'm thinking back to like 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. Um, I was in high school basically, so like 15 to 18 roughly. And even in the high school environment where things are supposed to be easier, dating and getting anything going with the opposite sex was really um, laborious for most boys. And most of the female students I recall were ambivalent towards serious dating, long-term dating, um, or they were very, very against it, and like vocal about it, and they were overt um, sluts, for lack of a better term.
Hmm.
But the males, the boys had there was no intervention done by anyone. There was no intervention from the parents of these girls. There was no intervention from teachers. No rebellion from the respective boys. Something happened. Something really went off the rails when we came of age, and nobody was there to shut it down or alleviate it. And
Yeah.
and like any serious problem, it if it festers, it just becomes more of a of an ailment, and it becomes more difficult to address. It's that way in medicine, like with diseases.
Yes.
Some diseases, yeah.
I was thinking of movies that I saw that seemed to normalize the whole thing. Did you watch Grease?
Yeah, years ago, my parents had that on VHS.
Yeah, and in the story was, I forget her name now, but um she well she was pregnant. There was she did sing a song about being pregnant. I can't. I think that she, the boy who knocked her up did marry her or something, but there seemed to normalize the idea of premarital sex, I suppose, and I guess Americans in American boys in their cars would probably find it quite easy to um, get up to these things in their drive-in movies, etc. I mean, this is me just watching scenes of American life on through the movies. But I suppose the impression
Yes,
was
yeah.
that American adolescents would get more of that because they were educated in co-ed schools and they have this culture of prom king, prom queen, and the the expectation of relationships between the male and female adolescents. And I remember hating the whole idea, um, and thinking how painful it must be if you're not socially confident, and yeah, and really you should be you should be concentrating in your studies instead of worrying about having your heart broken or not getting the girl or whatever.
Uh, I'm I'm kind of torn on that uh, predicament. Let's say. I mean, if we lived in a truly ideal world where partners were assigned and they were assigned really really well, um, to prevent demographic collapse, then I would see focusing on your studies, or at least figuring out what your real talent is, or what skill set is right for you at a young age. I do see that as a totally valid social arrangement to be impressed onto young growing people. But like right now, or even when I was in high school, the boys who did not care at all about their studies and goofed off, and they didn't take school seriously, and they only used it as a means for socialization, those were the boys who didn't end up in my situation. Those were the boys who locked down a partner, and quite frankly, they're not smart enough to realize why they have what they have. But I'm an outsider looking in, and I think back to that chapter in life, and it all makes so much sense. Most of the boys were conditioned to care so much about their grades and how well they tested on the ACT and things like this. But the boys who just disregarded it um, as early as middle school, I think back to these specific boys I know personally. Um, None of them have to wade through this horrendous sewer that we call gender dynamics in the modern era. They are basically safe because of what they did at the age of 14, 15, 16, and not listening to their parents, not listening to the authoritarian figures, not listening to the advice of their parents, and just completely blocking out the pressure and focusing on the opposite sex, which sounds really really shallow, and perhaps it is. But given the time and the place, they ultimately made the right decision in my
Do
eyes.
you think so? Might they not be divorced or not having that successful a life after school?
I I mean, they're none of them are wealthy, but they do have a long-term partner that wants to be with them, and that in and of itself is basically priceless. Um,
Hmm.
and it shows in their mental health and the way they carry themselves. Most of these guys have have not aged particularly well, and yet the girlfriend that they've had since sophomore year or junior year of high school is still with them. Um, there's a theory in the manosphere that is called "just be first" theory, and it's obviously self-explanatory. But I do think it is a genuine phenomenon of some kind. I think if she's young enough and you, the boy, are young enough, and um, you are the first boy that she has hit like milestones with, such as going to the dance, going on actual dates, um, the physical
Mhm,
intimacy. It seems to
mhm.
have some kind of profound, lasting psychological impact, even with the rampant degeneracy.
Yes, the idea of being first.
Yes, and I would have to say that if you're a young guy, if you're a boy in high school, you actually may be able to swerve these dating woes and being in the manosphere in general. It's I'm sure that there's a sizable amount right now of boys in high school who probably could um, maximize this.
But perhaps these days being first means nothing if the girl means to move on to the second, third, etc. And now we talk about body counts, and I wonder how this subject is raised. I suppose that you begin with a what do you think is a respectable body count for a man or a woman, or I suppose you could have a long conversation about that,
uh, yeah,
hypothetically speaking.
I think that like it's such an insipid thing to talk about. This whole, okay, where do we draw the line? What's the threshold? How much is it for a man? How much is it for a woman? Okay, what's the differential? Like, this is just superficial splitting hairs, and I hate it. I
Mm.
just want to scream at these people and say, you you morons, you're missing the point. Why are we discussing this in the first place? We should be um, we should be culling or like take whatever pre-adolescent males and females we have right now in Western society. We should basically be shielding them from ever having to talk about these things.
Yes. Yes, and I think that now is the time when everything is in such a state of flux, that I feel actually quite liberated in being able to talk about these things and not being looked at askance anymore. Because there's just something in the air when people think, "Oh, right, we've had enough. We really will seriously consider more radical, solutions to what we have up to now." And it always has something to do with religion, however hated it is, like in Speaker's Corner in London, it just came about naturally that there are all these Muslims there are all these people who don't like Muslims going there to argue with them, and because I suppose whether we really think about it consciously or not, the solution must be religious, because I guess religion, what did enforce marriage, and it imposed all these ideas of, yet mummy and daddy, and marriage and baby, and that sort of thing, which I guess you know religion is meant to scare us into doing.
Yeah, I'm not a religious person. I grew up religious, and I'm very soured
Mhm.
on organized religion, but I can't. I'm too intellectually honest of a person to try and pretend like there isn't a beautiful set of ramifications when um, a culture, a civilization is adopting a religion, whether it be Islam or Christianity, and really whichever version of Christianity. I think that's just kind of negligible, but I see the utility in these things. It does coerce people and scare them, which I'm not really a fan of this whole idea of scaring people into being more careful with things like sex and marriage. But if it works,
Mm.
and there is no other option, then obviously it comes down to that one alley to walk down. So people have lost any semblance of ethics, any real ethics, and sex and partnership across the sexes, like those are just very very delicate things. And so if people lose morality and ethics, specifically in those areas, it's just way way too deleterious. So I think the sacrifice is worth making. If people need to be coerced or scared or cornered into behaving reasonably, well, then I would say the ends justify the means, because in America specifically, there's a serious problem with the birth rate, and uh,
And
ultimately
so it
men and
is in the
women
Far
aren't
East.
happy.
Mm.
So I've heard, yeah. So like apparently Japan, it has a big problem with um, keeping things afloat, and they're well below replacement line is the word on the street. And I didn't learn about this until like 2019. I learned about this through Insomatics, and he referenced a very controversial documentary called Demographic Winter, and I'm not sure if it's still available to watch, but pretty provocative little piece of filmmaking. Um, I recommend you and anyone listening to this go watch it.
But please describe it, or give us a brief idea of it.
It's basically showing like the pyramid structure of demographics in Japan, and like how not that long ago they were actually doing very 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 well, but within a short amount of time, just over like a couple of generations, there's a severe drop off.
Oh yes, and the
Um,
hospitals and the schools closing um, soon after Japanese women went on the pill.
yes, um, and it, the United States, I'm not sure. It's unclear because no one has really dedicated much um, gathering of real data on this to like draw a comparison. I'm not really sure who between Japan, America, um, England, Canada, like who's in the deepest water, but um, apparently all of the above are in deep enough water. So I'm not sure why governments wouldn't be very very concerned about this, but it seems that they just rely on um,
Immigrant labor.
yeah, immigrant labor, and they count on immigrants to reproduce, which in my area, immigrants actually are reproducing. When I do see kids, it's never white kids. It's always Hispanic and Indian and some Middle Eastern kids. It's very, very rarely a group of white kids. So I'm a bit conspiratorial with this. I just assume that there is some kind of a an agenda to lower the white population, and the reason for that is a mystery to me. It's
I think anyone from um, a country outside the West, they would be more indoctrinated or had it stamped into their consciousness their obligation to marry and have children, or they would have, nagging parents and, and their friends getting married. While I think for white people that the same pressure doesn't exist anymore. It might have existed a few decades ago, but it certainly, um, you know, women are getting married later, and then it becomes normalized to marry later, you know. But I think things could easily change again. It flashed across my mind to ask you what you think of the slogans "Saving the White Race with Secular Quranism," um, which is, basically the idea that in order to um, make white people have children again, you have to say things like, that there should be no premarital sex. Or if you're not going to say that, you would have to say, we will have to make it a sexual offense to have children without um, a marriage license, but we will privilege um, married parents over non-parents. So people understand the position about, what, which group of people will get the most respect in society, which should always be married parents as opposed to, you know, unmarried parents. And the non-parents, they could be, people about to get married or gay people, or, but there's they're a kind of unknown quantity. But this is, a quick and easy way to, maybe change things. I imagine people will be horrified and don't want to do it. But I just don't see, you know, any other way than to say, the furniture of your mind needs to be changed. Because otherwise the problem will get worse. And I think it also has economic consequences because, obviously in producing anything, in manufacturing or even farming, you do need a labor force to do stuff, to
yes, of course.
so actually, businesses would have an interest in, managing these things properly. But unfortunately, the immigration thing is, we've got so many of them here already. A few more won't hurt, and a few more, and a few more, and then it becomes almost, um, like a behavioral addiction.
Correct. Yeah. You know, a couple of years ago, in like the late summer of 2023, like after Thomas White's stream introduced me to you, like I I was talking about this with some people in real life. Um, like I have an old friend from high school who, let's just say he arrived late to the Manosphere party. He didn't discover that discussion until sometime in late 2022. And he was obviously watching Absolute Dribble like Andrew Tate. It's all just shock value throwaway stuff. It's not like real productive discourse. But like he at one point was saying to me, the damage is done. It's probably not reversible at this point. The only thing a man can do if he's serious about getting out of this gynocentric hellscape is to leave the culture behind and assimilate in a radically different, healthier culture. And I had to disagree with that. I was like, that is an option. It's not the option. It's not the only option. And he
Mm.
was confused and he's like, what are you referring to? And I said, well, there's shockingly a genuine female MRA who does have an answer to this. Um, and it would basically require men and women to defer to government policies regarding intercourse and marriage and all these things. And at first he was like very, very against this. He's like, this sounds very Orwellian. It sounds too oppressive. And
Coercive.
yeah, like he just wasn't on board with it. And I my counter was, well, okay, you seem to have this mental block when you're talking about something like how men and women are together and sex and marriage, but when it comes down to crime, when it comes down to the justice system, you're actually kind of you're spiritually a secular coronist. You know, I've known this guy for years. I pointed out how like with other with crime, which obviously does disrupt society, but I guess in just different ways than a lack of sexual morality. Like he's pretty staunch. He's pretty right wing and unforgiving. And I mentioned how like there seems to be like a lapse in logic. It's like why don't you apply those lofty sort of standards to something like marriage and sex? Like, don't you think marriage and sex is like a critical thing to supervise and look after? You know, the same way we supervise and look after people's actions with taxes. You know, if you don't pay your taxes or you do something dishonest with trading, it's all white collar crime, and you can go to prison for a very, very long time. And you can apply this just all across the board. I don't really understand the mental block that people seem to have in general with trying to address the gender dynamic question. Because if you want improvement in specifically in that area, and things are already amiss, then you have no other option. You have to implement some kind of seemingly strict set of policies, and people who violate it will be classed as criminals, and they'll be tried and punished accordingly. You know, the same way you would be punished accordingly if you attempted murder, if you drove a vehicle while intoxicated, if you did anything like this. There not
Yes,
only
committed
would
a
there be
sexual offence,
yes, yeah,
which is what it
and
is, really.
right, and people seem to not understand how it is an offense. They see it as this completely benign action,
They see
but
it as a
it
victimless
we're,
crime. That is the problem, isn't it? It's like, well, this guy didn't fall in. I had sex with somebody, not my spouse, but you know, this guy didn't fall in. But then it it becomes a kind of miasma, and so people think, oh well, this guy didn't fall in, well, maybe I can do it too, and then everybody does it, and then it becomes, well, harder to correct because it becomes normalized and generalized, and the majority.
yeah, unfortunately, it's a delicate thing, and it's a very slippery slope. It's very, very easy for something like um, a social contract of monogamy that isn't really enforced by government or anything. It's just a general agreement, like what my dad experienced when he was growing up, none of that was like the letter of the law, but the way people comported themselves, you would think it almost was the letter of the law, with the rate of participation and how serious people took it.
Yes, and I think we all feel the loss of this institution because, well, I guess once you lose it, it's very hard to get back. It's kind of like, well, I don't know, you lose your momentum. When you go up a hill, you really need to keep, you know, maintain your momentum, or you'll slide back down. And we've kind of slid back down. And as the society ages, it becomes, well, I don't know, the national character kind of takes on the persona of, whatever the average age of the country is. And it's 40 and rising. And obviously, a society whose average age is 20 is going to be, more to have more up and get up and go, and be more receptive to new ideas, and a society that is 40 and rising, because then you'll get a bunch of old people only thinking about their bones and their cold and their comfort and their you know I
Right.
guess it's true what they say about demographics being destiny, because I think the Romans were having a problem with their birth rate, and to the extent that they were thinking of imposing a bachelor tax. And I think their problem at the time was the practice of pederasty, which was also Greek practice. So I think you might read of an older man and a younger man, and apparently it was approved of by the government because it taught the younger man, the adolescent male, how to be a man. But after a certain age, it was frowned on, and the older man was expected to get married, and if he didn't, it was terrible. But I suppose there came a time when they said, well, I don't see why we should get married. And then I guess it led to not enough people joining the Roman army and having to use mercenaries, and the mercenaries not doing their job and draining the state treasury, and and lots of knock-on effects, I suppose. And apparently the fall of Rome was not so much an invasion as a kind of walking in.
Hmm.
So it seems to me that in a way history does repeat itself, and obviously it is a question of numbers, and it's not just the color of the skin of the other people, but also attitudes within the same family, within different generations of the same family, of the same religion and the same race. They can often be the subject of terrible family feuds when they don't agree with each other about how things are done. And I guess we do get confused because the rules keep changing so much. And
Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and I suppose the other thing is, men and women maybe hate each other more because they have more failed relationships with each other, and they're more uncertain about what to do because there doesn't seem to be any kind of norm of behavior that we're expected to follow. And
Hmm.
yeah, but I think we
Yeah.
just need to, well, I think we just need to express, describe the problem, to each other and anybody who will listen. And I think eventually somebody will notice, because I think, well, the media should take an interest in this, And I think that there has been a lot of self censorship in these circles, because I guess, the men who want to think of themselves as above the incel group. I mean, they wouldn't even admit to being incel, right? They would have to kind of fake it until they make it, sort of thing. And leaving the people who do actually honestly want to solve the problem, you know, as a marginalized and shunned group. But well,
Right. Those men who are faking it. I I sort of that leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth in a way, but at the same time, I guess I can forgive it because talking about these things from a male perspective with your friends and family, that is pretty risky.
hmm,
But I would say it is doable if you well, if you don't use manosphere slang, if you don't use incel terminology, and you you try to like not point the finger at one sex or the other, like if you try to like talk about this in a very scientific way, I don't think there's any net negative, if that's in polite conversation or with random coworkers at work. But uh, I've noticed over the years that people don't really seem too interested, even when you package things really well for them to make it very digestible. At best, you'll get them agreeing with you, but they're not in
they're
any
not going
way
to do
gung ho.
anything. Mm.
They're not they themselves won't do anything. And at worst, it's like mere ambivalence, I suppose. But since uh, since the public mass can't be relied on to correct these things, correct themselves, I would say that's an argument to do it for them. And yeah, there I think there's just a time and a place for that. Um, it could be
Surely it
through
would be,
governments or something else. I don't know.
yeah, but I mean, people must complain about their government a lot these days. So every
They do.
anytime somebody complains about the government, you can jam this in, like, well, and they probably will be talking about immigrants, and of course, one thing leads to another.
Uh huh.
Well,
Yeah.
politics leads to religion, immigration leads to birth rates and labor shortages, which leads to the ease or difficulty of getting married and affording children and equal pay, and you know I suppose it can be done. I Yeah, I think it can be done in if somebody's reasonably receptive. But even if they aren't, even if they're hostile, it's still doable. In fact, it would actually make the moment more dramatic, and the people around you take more interest. If you get a hostile reception, then you don't back down. I mean, I find you know through experience that if the exchange is too polite, people kind of doze off. So a bit of drama, I guess, won't be unhelpful.
Yeah, if you're tact and careful with how you weaponize the drama or instigate it. But
I think a really effective way would be to ask a question, because obviously giving them a lecture is if they're not the hostile and not receptive, but if it could just be reduced to a question, then it's only one sentence, and you can remember that, and they can remember that, and questions have the effect of nagging at the consciousness, and and they're quite easily remembered because they're only one sentence. So if we make a point of framing it in a question, I think we would actually get further than if we were given a 1 hour lecture. If we had the opportunity of giving a 1 hour lecture, I mean.
Yeah, posing like a single question like that actually is a pretty smart move. That's a good suggestion. You could, I mean, you could fit that onto a billboard right off
Mm.
of a major highway, in every city in America and Canada, and people would see it, and they would be thinking about that when they're driving to their pathetic wage cage experience. It would actually be worth trying, and it wouldn't cost that much money. You obviously pay rent for the billboard, and then the whoever does the art
Hmm.
design or the painting. But
Hmm.
I'm not sure how we would generate those funds, but it's probably worth doing, and you could most likely parlay that into some kind of a PSA or a lecture that would be done on C-SPAN, or
Mm.
perhaps through a popular media outlet, one that's really popular with like younger people. So one like Vice.
Hmm.
Um, but I think Vice is too bought and paid for. I don't think they would talk about secular Coranism and the way out of this mess. But you could probably go to a more right wing leaning smaller outlet like Epic Times or something, and they may entertain it because it's like a slightly Christian slanted pro family sort of set of ideals that the people in charge have. So
Yes.
if you did bring this up to them, they would probably be at least a little bit compelled to do a story on it. That is
Yes.
comprehensive and covers the basic things like, okay, here's what went wrong with the demographics. Here are the generations, the cohorts that were affected. Here's like the general outline of the consequences of dating apps,
Oh, they should
social
be
media.
banned.
Oh yeah, if people are serious about curing this illness, then they should be banned, and the servers, wherever they are, should be dragged out to the West Desert and destroyed with military equipment.
Yes. Mm.
And it would be a spectacle. We could all watch it on our TVs, like the moon landing.
Yes. Yes. And my little idea is also that the men could just say, we're not going to marry unless no fault divorce is abolished. That could be quite an easy thing to do because it's a kind of female withholding thing. Like we're not going to marry until until no fault divorce is abolished, and yes, I think that could be quite effective because then you don't have to do anything. You don't have to find money and put stuff on billboards and whatever. Although of course you could still do that, and should do that. But just going on a marriage strike would, well, okay, it might provoke the women into into declaring a sex strike, but then that's when I think the situation would be closer to resolution when you kind of put your cards on the table and the other side, has to look at their cards. Because ultimately, I think feminism hurts women. It hurts women who, should be married in their 20s, where, they are at the height of their beauty and, more malleable as a personality and more likely to have healthy children. And, and feminism makes them wait longer until not as attractive. So it's not, it's not what's the expression? A lose. Well, I think it's a win-win situation for men and women. If they think it would be better for them to, become married parents with the support of the government, and if enough people made enough of a noise, I'm sure somebody would notice it. All it takes is people being prepared to say these things.
Yeah. Yeah. As jaded as I am, and as unplugged from the matrix as I am, I still think that if there is potential to actually apply solutions, it would just take um, some organization on men's part, and but that's like a very very difficult thing to arrange. Men are not uh, men don't demonstrate in group bias the way women do. Women have a very very clear in group bias, whereas men are pretending to, but they ultimately have no. There is no internal support system amongst men. Men are uh, fundamentally, seemingly just competing with each other all the time. So even in the manosphere, there is no safe place really where men can just congregate and they're functionally brothers per se.
But they will
And
steal each other's girlfriends and have sex with each other's wives. Hmm.
they I mean they'll also, it's really amazing what men do. Uh, in my book, men are not off the hook. They are just as complicit as women are. Um, so like men, not only is there like the potential of stealing your girlfriend or having an affair that involves your girlfriend. I mean, there's also lots of really annoying gesturing that men do. Like if they see you even interacting with some girl at work or something, they try to interrupt it, even if your intentions when talking to the girl are purely platonic and professional. Um, I've seen this over and over and over again. Just being at work, being out and about, it's really really annoying. Um, so if men can't, in some way, like if men can't be on the same page, um, I I don't see a strike happening in the near future, but it would happen, and it would be possible if, let's say, um, it doesn't even have to be all men. It just needs to be a sizable amount. Like if it was say 40 to 50% um, of men were like actively publicly on strike against not just marriage, but any kind of nicety for women. So buying them a drink, taking them on a date, entertaining them in hopes of getting laid. If that all just got put on ice by a large portion of men, I think it would be enough to incite something positive. There would be um, an awakening of some sort. There would be discussion generated. Um, it would lead to something positive. I can guarantee that.
Yes, and just by articulating these ideas, I'm sure they will spread, um, because you know all these ideas begin with speech and well the expression of these ideas. But oh yes, code of behaviour. Well, I suppose you could. What is this interrupting thing? You'd be talking to a female and some guy would come along and interrupt you because he thought you were, well, monopolizing the attention of a woman he's attracted to or something? Was that what you were saying? I didn't
Uh,
quite understand the situation you were describing.
More or less, that's what happens. I haven't just been on the receiving end of that. I've witnessed it in real time. Like whenever something happens that causes a one-on-one dialogue to occur between a guy and a girl, I've noticed that if there's other guys in the vicinity in the room, one of them will barge in and derail because he's assuming that that other man that is talking to the girl is making some sort of progress, even though that's very often not the case. Plenty of um, interactions between guys and gals are platonic. They are professional. They are there is nothing under the surface. So
Hmm.
this is just really brash levels of insecurity being displayed by men, and I can understand and I can sympathize with that because I'm a guy myself, and I remember being younger and basically engaging in similar behavior because I didn't know any better, and I didn't understand what was really going on the macro level.
Oh, right. So
But
it's something as basic as, oh, she's talking to him, but she should be talking to me. Is that is that what you
basically,
meant?
yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's the mentality, and their
Hmm.
actions make it clear, but it it comes off as just very immature to me because it I think it goes without saying, a guy and a girl can have a conversation that has nothing behind it. No flirting, no potential for flirting. It's a brick wall. It's totally boring. It's nothing more than what the surface level insinuates.
But perhaps it's not
But
even sexual. In that it could be all girls, and um, I suppose with a popular girl talking to somebody, somebody else would want the attention of the most popular girl. So
yeah,
maybe it's that sort of thing.
yeah, that's valid. If it's like a very attractive girl or some kind of a high status girl, I mean, absolutely, you would see no shortage of um, another man trying to just interrupt and derail, get her attention instead, or he'll um, deliver backhanded compliments to the man, or try to make the man who's originally talking to the girl make him look um, gay, stupid, weak. Men have their own uh, ways of negging and knocking down their perceived opponents. And women do this too. If there's, I don't think it's as rampant. I don't think it's as commonly observed, but women do this too, more or less. Like if there's some kind of a disagreement or a race to vet some guy or get his attention, women essentially do the same thing. They will more or less knock each other down, nag each other,
Hmm.
um, exchange backhanded compliments,
Hmm.
something like that.
Mm,
So it's probably just mere human psychology.
mhm, mm. Yes, I'm sure it can all be managed, if people just felt more confident about raising these issues. And I think, as things get worse, they will complain a little more. And I think, we might be ahead of the curve in anticipating and, maybe polishing the message a little better.
Yes, I've I've thought about making my own content that covers these things. I haven't produced anything yet, but I do still have it in the back of my mind. Um, I would like to make a um, like shorter video essay that is fairly comprehensive.
Hmm.
Um, but I would want it to be consumable for all people, old, young, men, women. So it's not going to be anything like the typical monologue video you find in the dark corner of the manosphere.
Well, it could be entertaining, comedic, even if you got your friends to play the different roles in their squeaky voices, situation comedies, maybe.
Um, comedy is very effective. I'm just not very I'm not very talented with comedy. I'm not very good at writing it or
Mm.
perhaps performing it. My current like vision for this video essay is I would want it to be um pretty serious in tone, um and educational, but I don't want it to be boring though. Like there's like a lot of things to cover in it, so the editing would be pretty brisk.
Hmm.
And it would be nice to have like a proper narrator for it, because I don't really care for my voice as a narration device. So I still have to figure that out. I may just use AI, but that's no fun.
Hmm.
That's boring. But yeah, there's even though the black pill and the really bright minds uh, in this sphere have beaten the horse a lot. I still think that there is meat on the bone to be chewed. I still think that there is some some more pushing on of the envelope to be done, and um, it's interesting how it used to be like used to be such a myopic genre or subculture of the internet. It used to be just talking about looks maxing to fare better in dating, which is really uh, it's kind of a pathetic non-starter for so many men, to
Hmm.
only worry about their own personal SMV and think that they're somehow magically going to evade um, the cultural problems and the demographic problems and the way technology hampers the sexes. But fast forward to now, compared to 2011, 2012, there seems to be like a lot of intersecting, you know, looks maxing and the demographic theory, um, the commentary on technology and government and agendas, um, and like the more esoteric philosophical stuff, which comes from people like Collective Dismal, and then the white nationalism crowd, which is from if I recall correctly, that is where Thomas White got started. Like, there's a lot of these intersections between these ideas, these talking points that were consolidated or not consolidated, separated pretty staunchly before 10 or so years ago. But from what I can tell, um, the awareness, the acumen seems to be growing and growing and growing, with specifically like within the like the black pill space. There seems to be quite a bit of acknowledgement, but not a lot of talk about practical solutions, which is disappointing. I would
Well, I
say that's
think
the next step.
you could choose a leader. Your thing could be you're going to write down a code of behavior, and then you're going to choose a leader, and then you can talk about it on your channels about who it might be, and then you appoint. You create a kind of running narrative that people will kind of be interested in. Do you think that might work?
Yeah, I I see potential.
Uh-huh.
Um, I do. I I I mean, as what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, I don't want to say jaded. I'm not jaded. I'm just I'm a realist about these things. Um, I do think that there's probably multiple multiple options that could be introduced on a societal level to not just fix what's happening, but like make sure it never occurs again. Um,
Mhm.
but I just think yours, like your signature blend, your hot sauce recipe is just particularly straightforward, not convoluted, very simple, very fair, and it doesn't. No group in that kind of an arrangement can complain about being oppressed or having a greater um, weight on their shoulders. So like that's the beauty of what you've proposed.
Yes, I think it's fair enough for women. Since I proposed it, I think I could live under that, and I think, well, even gay people can live under that. I'm really trying to get my gay streaming partner, who wants to be the father of some ideology, but I was thinking, well, he could be, you know, the one to introduce it in a way that won't seem terrifying to Americans. And because it's him, it won't be scary, you know. Well, that's my hope, but I don't know how successful I will be in persuading him. But yeah, I think the more people talk about it, the more it will grow legs on its own. And I think, it has a certain theoretical appeal anyway, you know. And I hope you look at Vincent's blogspot, which is basically AI generated documents about scenarios, sitcoms, pamphlets and policies about how it could work in America with characters and that sort of thing. I do hope you will have a look at it when you have time to give you ideas, maybe. It's also meant to be
Um,
comedic.
oh, I see. Yeah, I will have to visit that.
Okay, type that in the chat. Right. Have I suppose we should wrap up now. Um, any last words?
Um, Things are bad, but they could be better,
They will
and
be
it
better.
wouldn't. I mean that was very optimistic. If they will be better, I hope it's during my lifetime. Um, and but I mean, who knows? It's hard to project into the future per se. But I personally do see a fair amount of potential for improvement. Um, I'll die on that hill. I don't think I can be swayed other any other direction. I'm not really like an absolute fatalist or a doomer, as many call it. I'm I'm more in the middle. Like, I realize what has occurred and how disastrous it is, but I do see a very viable lifeline to grab onto. It's just not going to be easy to get everyone to grab onto that metaphorical lifeline. But
Mhm.
it was good coming on here and actually talking to you. I've wanted to talk to you for basically 2 years.
What kept you away?
Um, well, I didn't know you had a channel.
You didn't. Oh
Yeah,
God.
I didn't know you had a channel until earlier this year in the spring.
Oh yes, it did get deleted. I've got sort of two channels I have no access to, but um, yes, but yes, most of my material is in the book or in on my Substack, and maybe you know reading that is quicker to access my latest ideas and listening to me drone on YouTube. But yes, I try to propagate the message in different mediums, in different media, I should say. Oh,
Yeah, you're definitely diligent and trying to get the message out there.
well, I hope I will get it out there more now with your help and with your interest, um, and hopefully we'll speak again before too long to compare notes and discuss progress.
Right. Yeah. Uh well, you've done voice acting, if I remember correctly.
Um, Not really. I did do a kind of summer drama school, but I wouldn't say I was trained.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's no problem for me. I mean, I like your voice because it's it's kind of what's the word I'm looking for here? Um Stentorian, a little mysterious, kind of theatrical, reminiscent of the old world. Like, I would like your voice to be in the video that I hopefully can get around to making in the near future.
It
Like,
would be a pleasure.
it would be, yeah, it would elevate, it would add some products, like some serious production value. Like, when you have a good voice over, that really can elevate footage and things. But yeah, I'm glad you're open to it. So um when the
Yeah, I'll
time
happily
comes,
do your voiceover.
that's great. Yeah, that's very good news for me.
Okay. Okay, excess mail. We'll. I'm sure we'll speak again soon to, do the things that you were talking about, um, and thank you again for coming, and thank you everyone for coming too.
Happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays, everyone.